Judge Malik Monroe stood tall as he faced Deputy Hank Riker, his patience wearing thin with each mocking syllable that the officer directed at him. The fluorescent lights of the security screening room buzzed ominously overhead, their harsh brightness, casting stark shadows on the floor where Malik's once proud silver locks lay in scattered piles, remnants of the humiliation he had just endured. "Who do you think you are, walking in here like you own the place?" Riker sneered, his smugness palpable. "Someone who has spent years earning that badge you're disrespecting," Malik replied, his voice steady, belying the whirlwind of anger raging inside. The laughter of the other officers echoed around. Him, their mockery aimed not just toward his disheveled appearance but toward his very identity. He could see their faces, those who thought themselves the arbiters of power and authority. The irony wasn't lost on him. He was the one wearing the robe, the one tasked with upholding the law, yet at that moment it felt as if it were they who wielded the power. "Let me remind you, Deputy, that no one in this room is above the law," Malik continued, now stepping closer, his voice low but vibrant with a fierce energy. Each word was like a hammer striking against the polished marble floor. "You think you can humiliate me here, that I won't fight back? You have no idea what I'm capable of." Riker smirked. "You're just a judge, Monroe. A faceless name in a black robe. No one cares about your little courtroom games." The insult hung in the air between them like a thick fog. Malik's fists clenched at his sides, but he forced himself to breathe, to focus on the long game. This was a stepping stone, a humiliation that would ultimately strengthen his resolve. He could feel the energy in the room shifting, almost vibrating with tension. The other officers exchanged glances, feeling it too, the sense that something larger was at play here. "What you fail to understand, Deputy, is that I'm not just a judge. I'm also the very voice of those you think you can suppress," Malik said, his confidence returning as he straightened his posture. "Every laugh you share here, every time you slap a badge on the innocent for sport, it just fuels the fire." The door swung open, and in walked two more officers, their shoulders squared, the look on their faces torn between loyalty to Riker and an unsettling awareness of the truth that hung like smoke in the air. They were witnesses to the unfolding tension, and the stakes were high. "Is everything all right in here?" one asked. "Just a friendly check-in," Riker replied, a thin smile creeping onto his lips, but Malik could see the undercurrent of anxiety beneath that facade. "Not friendly at all," Malik interjected. "I'm here to remind everyone what justice truly means, and you can choose to ignore that or witness it." The room fell silent, the officers momentarily captivated by Malik's unwavering gaze. He paused for a brief moment to collect his thoughts. Somewhere inside, a quiet fury ignited. This was more than a personal battle. This enacted change was necessary. "Your Honor, do you need us to provide an escort out?" One of the officers finally broke the silence, cautious. Malik chuckled, the kind of laugh that carries weight and knowledge. "I'm not going anywhere. The real question is, how many of you are willing to stand up against what's happening in this courthouse? How many of you will continue to turn a blind eye when the very people who swore to protect are abusing their power?" The air crackled as his words hung in the silence. Riker, visibly taken aback, stepped closer, his bravado faltering. "You don't get to dictate how we operate. We're the law here." Malik leaned in, his tone dropping to a harsh whisper. "You're not the law. You're a parasite feeding off it. Today you've messed with the wrong person. I have every intention of exposing you and your accomplices." Suddenly, the steel door behind Malik swung open again, and the soft hum of murmurs erupted in the hallway where curious staff and legal advisors had gathered to witness the spectacle. Malik caught sight of his intern, Megan, biting her lip, her brow furrowed in concern. "Stay back," he called out firmly. "This isn't for you to see." But as soon as he said so, it was too late. Riker's attitude had shifted. He sensed that he was losing control over the narrative, and in a desperate move, he gripped Malik's arm tightly, pulling him close, their faces inches apart. "Your arrogance will be your downfall, Monroe," he hissed, feeling the pressure of his grip. Malik's mind raced, thinking about the time, the people whose lives he'd changed positively from the bench. He couldn't back down. With a sharp twist of his wrist, he broke free from Riker's hold, his eyes ablaze with determination. "Let's see you try to silence me," he replied, stepping back, his presence commanding. "Today is the beginning of your reckoning." With that, Malik turned and stormed out of the screening room, the eyes of the gathered staff following him with a mix of concern and newfound respect. He could feel the weight of their gaze, their silent encouragement pushing him forward. He was not alone in this fight. Determined, Malik strode past rows of officers who silently regarded him, their tension palpable. He wasn't just a judge anymore. He was a beacon of hope, a symbol of resilience against a broken system. With each step through the courthouse, he felt a connection to the civil rights leaders whose stories had shaped justice long before him. Pausing briefly, he looked toward Megan, who had managed to squeeze through the door, and followed him closely. "You saw what happened in there," Malik said urgently, his tone serious. "You understand the implications." "Yes, Your Honor," she nodded, her voice quiet but unwavering. "I'm ready to support you, whatever it takes." Malik placed a steady hand on her shoulder, gratitude washing over him. "Good. I'll need all the support I can get. Today is about more than just me. It's about everyone who has faced this kind of injustice." The buzz of conversations erupted in a chaotic symphony as Malik moved toward the courtroom, pushing through the heavy wooden doors. A sea of faces turned to him, the press, other judges, the plaintiffs waiting impatiently for their claims to be heard. This room was no longer just a courtroom. It had become an arena, and Malik was prepared to fight. He made his way to the bench, each step echoing like a drumbeat, affirming his position and authority. "Court is now in session," he declared, his voice ringing with clarity. The room hushed immediately, every eye drawn to the man who had weathered the storm of humiliation only to rise as a force of fierce determination. "We will begin today with preliminary testimony on Case 2371F, United States v. Charleston Police. Department, charges of abuse of power, excessive force, and civil rights violations." As witnesses filed in, Malik knew this would not be an ordinary day. Every testimony was going to peel back the layers of secrets buried beneath the courthouse's facade, exposing a flawed system that had grown accustomed to silence. At the plaintiff's table, a retired veteran stood, his hands shaking as he took the stand. "I was at the protest last year. Officers were supposed to protect us, but they didn't." Malik leaned forward, listening intently as the man shared his harrowing account, a tale of police brutality that reverberated in the hearts of those present. Each word was a scalpel cutting through complacency, laying bare the truth of systemic injustice. As the proceedings continued, Malik's resolve strengthened. He glanced toward the defense table where Riker waited, judgment etched on his face. That night in the screening room wasn't just a personal violation. It was merely a prelude to something much larger. After a series of witnesses painted a damning picture against Riker, Malik called for a recess. Stepping into his chambers, he allowed himself a moment to breathe. Amidst the sound of papers rustling and chairs scraping back, he reflected on the oppressive forces he was up against, forces that operated in shadows, masked as guardians of the law. The door creaked open, and Malik turned to see his clerk, the anxious yet determined Megan. "Judge, there's something you need to see." She handed him a folder, the contents spilling forth. Complaints against Riker, testimony from victims previously disregarded, evidence of the corruption that had festered unchecked. "Where did you find this?" Malik asked, urgency thrumming through his voice. From a former colleague who couldn't stand by any longer. They were too afraid to come forward themselves. Malik's chest tightened with a mixture of gratitude and fire. This was it. The ammunition he needed to ignite the battlefield of public awareness. He could feel a palpable energy shift outside his chambers. I need you to prepare this for the record. We're going to make sure everyone hears these voices today, he declared, resolve flooding through him. As he returned to the courtroom, the atmosphere crackled with anticipation, the collective breaths of the onlookers echoing the tension like a living entity. Malik took his place behind the bench, the weight of the robe now transformed from a mere title to a shield of accountability. "Court is back in session," he proclaimed, and even the smallest sound of protest faded into silence. With an unwavering gaze, he directed attention to the defense attorney and the officers seated at the table, determined to make them reckon with the consequences of their actions. There was no turning back now. Justice was not merely a word. It was a rising wave ready to crash over an oppressive history, pulling the truth into the light. In that moment, Malik Monroe wasn't just a judge. He was the embodiment of change, ready to confront the darkness that had long been ignored. A court is back in session. Judge Malik Monroe. "Let's proceed with the next witness, please," Malik called, keeping his tone authoritative yet steady. The chair creaked as a young woman stood taking the stand. "State your name for the record," he instructed, leaning forward, focused. "Marissa." "Collins," she replied, her voice shaky yet determined. "Miss Collins, you testified at last year's protest. Can you share with the court what happened that day?" As she began, shadows danced on the walls. Memories flowed, chaos, confusion, and overwhelming fear filled her words. "I was just standing there holding a sign. Then the police advanced, screaming at us to disperse. I didn't know what to do. I turned to run." "What happened next?" Malik pressed, noticing Riker's tightening grip on the edge of the table. "They grabbed me," Marissa continued, dread creeping into her voice. "I fell. Her voice broke, and Malik saw her fight against tears. "They didn't give me a chance to explain. They threw me to the ground, pressed my face into the dirt." "Thank you, Miss Collins," Malik said, his voice quiet, but full of emotion. "I have no further questions." As she left the stand, the murmurs of disbelief swirled around the courtroom, but the tension only tightened in ravaged Riker's jaw. Malik could sense that the tide was shifting, the walls were closing in on the deputy, and he relished the control he now held. "Your Honor," Riker burst out, standing abruptly, "I object. This testimony is fabricated. She's lying." "Your accusation holds no ground without evidence, Deputy," Malik shot back, his anger simmering beneath the surface. "Enough!" Riker's voice rose, echoing through the chamber. "This whole case is a farce, and you know it!" A hushed gasp rippled through the spectators. Malik's heart pounded. This was the breaking point. "Careful now," he warned, anger lacing his words. "You're treading dangerous waters." Malik took a measured breath, redirecting his focus. "Next witness, please," he called, and the door swung open yet again. The courtroom went still, but not for long. "Your Honor!" It was a voice from the back, a man stepping forward, his hands raised in urgency. "I have information regarding the misconduct." The courtroom erupted with murmurs. Malik squinted against the commotion as the man reached the front. It was Mark Ellis, a former officer known for his outspoken nature. He had been let go after whistleblowing on his department a year prior. "What information do you have, Officer Ellis?" Malik's voice commanded respect. Ellis hesitated, scanning the room as if weighing his options. "I've seen things that could turn the entire case upside down." Riker's face turned a shade of crimson, his eyes darting between Malik and the new arrival. "What's the meaning of this?" he spat. "This isn't the time for theatrics." Malik raised his hand, silencing the defense. "No theatrics here, Deputy, just the truth. Let's hear it." Ellis took a deep breath. I was present the day of the protest, he began. I witnessed the orders being given to escalate the situation. It wasn't just a misunderstanding. It was a plan. A ripple of unease floated through the gallery. Everyone leaned in, drawn deeper into the unfolding drama. There were directives to use force, Ellis continued, his voice steadier now. I couldn't believe it. I reported it to my superiors, but they swept it under the rug. I was fired for speaking up. Riker shifted uncomfortably, the tension radiating from him like heat waves. Malik's eyes narrowed. The pieces were falling into place. Didn't you also take part in the cover-up? Riker snapped. Ellis shot back. Not a cover-up, an attempt to expose it. You're just trying to deflect blame. Objection! Riker barked again, but Malik, fueled by the growing evidence, pressed on. Officer Ellis, what can you provide to substantiate your claims? Malik asked, feeling the urgency of the moment swell. I recorded it, Ellis said, pulling out a small thumb drive from his pocket. Everything. The orders, the communications, everything that proves it wasn't just chaos, it was criminal. Your honor! Riker's voice was close to desperation now. This is absurd! You can't just— Watch me, Malik interrupted, authority lacing his tone. He took the drive and motioned for the court clerk. Prepare this for entry into the record. We'll play it now. Gasps echoed through the courtroom as he turned to the gallery, his heart racing with anticipation. This was it, the moment that could undo everything. The drive hummed to life, and a hush fell over the crowd. The audio began to play, filled with the voice of an unidentified officer giving explicit orders, commanding fellow officers to escalate the situation, to use force against the civilians. Malik watched the expressions shift. Riker's face drained of color as the truth unfolded like a dark cloud over him. You think you can intimidate us? Riker seethed, but Malik could see the tremor in his voice, the unmistakable fear bubbling beneath his arrogance. Your actions speak louder than you realize, Deputy, Malik replied, his eyes never leaving Riker's. And now your time is up. The recording ended, and the courtroom erupted into chaos. Malik banged his gavel for order, the echo almost drowned in the rising tide of disbelief and anger. Your Honor, Riker shouted, desperation creeping into his voice. This is a setup, an absolute travesty. Enough, Malik roared, silencing the courtroom with authority. The evidence is clear. It's time you face the consequences. As Riker's facade crumbled, Malik felt a surge of righteous anger. There were always those willing to oppress, but today was different. Today, justice had a voice. Deputy Riker, Malik said, directing his gaze at the man who had once towered over him. You are hereby charged with abuse of power, civil rights violations, and misconduct. You will have to answer for your actions. Riker recoiled as if struck. The fight was draining from him like the tide pulling away from the shore. The silence in the room was profound, filled with the weight of what had just transpired. It was over, a long, arduous battle reaching its climax. But Malik knew this was just the beginning. As he surveyed the courtroom, he saw faces that reflected hope, courage, and change, the very essence of justice he had vowed to uphold. Court is adjourned, he declared, allowing a breath of relief to wash over him as the crowd began to disperse, whispers of triumph coursing through the gallery. But as the gavel fell, Malik felt a vertiginous rush of anticipation. The aftermath held the potential for something bigger, something more powerful, a chance to reshape a narrative long twisted by fear and control. This was just the dawn. As Malik stepped out of the courtroom, he understood his true mission was far from over. The struggle for justice had taken a bold turn, and he was ready for the fight ahead. Court is adjourned, Malik Monroe announced, his gavel slamming against the polished wood, but the echoes of his words barely registered in the charged atmosphere. As the sounds of whispers and shuffling Feet filled the courtroom. He felt an almost palpable tension in the air, like the moments before a storm. Riker stood frozen behind the defense table, the color drained from his face, his eyes wide with disbelief and rage. Behind him, the weight of the courtroom audience shifted, their collective breath held, anticipating the fallout of today's revelations. "Your Honor!" Riker spat, desperation clawing at the edges of his voice. "You're making a grave mistake! You think this is over?" Malik stepped forward, his heart racing, adrenaline coursing through his veins like a raging river. "It is just beginning, Deputy. You can no longer hide behind your badge. You have no idea what you're getting into," Riker sneered, the bravado now laced with a hint of panic. "I won't go down without a fight." Malik squared his shoulders, determined not to back down. "You've already lost the battle. Riker, you made your choice when you decided to turn your badge into a weapon against the very people you swore to protect." As the spectators continued to murmur among themselves, Megan rushed to Malik's side, her eyes alight with concern and excitement. "What's the next step?" she asked, breathless. "Expose everything," Malik said. "We need to ensure that this doesn't remain a courtroom battle. This is about the community. It's about all those who have suffered." Before he could continue, a loud crash rang out from the back of the courtroom. A wooden chair had toppled over as an unknown figure bolted for the exit. "They're coming!" a voice shouted ominously, panic ringing clear through the chaos. Malik turned sharply. "Who's coming?" But before he could keep up, Riker lunged forward, grabbing a briefcase from the table and racing toward the back exit. "Stop him!" Malik shouted, but the deputies present hesitated, caught off guard by the sudden chaos. "I'll handle this!" Megan shouted, sprinting after Riker, determination etched across her face. "Wait!" Malik called out, but she was already gone, her heels clicking on the tile. In his gut, Malik felt a wild mix of fear and anger. What does he have in that case? He wondered anxiously, trying to piece it together. Perhaps it held evidence against someone, or worse, a threat. "Your Honor, One of the court officers stuttered. But it was too late. Riker had already disappeared through the double doors leading to the hallway. Malik's instincts kicked in. "We need to search the building. There's no telling what he's planning." Just as he was about to command the officers, a shot rang out, echoing through the concrete halls like thunder. Gasps erupted as heads turned, hearts quickening. The sound of feet scrambling was all around him. "Get down!" Malik yelled, lunging. For the nearest bystander, as chaos erupted, screams filled the air, shouts pierced the atmosphere, and confusion spread like wildfire. "Megan!" he shouted, trying. "Listen to me. Think about what you're doing," Malik reasoned, poised to reason even in the uproar. "This isn't the answer. There's still a path for justice without this destruction." "Justice?" Riker laughed bitterly. "You have no idea what justice really is. Look around you, Judge. This system is rotting from the inside out. And if I have to burn it to the ground to rebuild it, then so be it." "Don't you see?" Malik shouted, desperation rising in his voice. "You're not a martyr. You're a coward hiding behind chaos. You can make a difference without throwing away lives." For just a moment, Riker hesitated, something flickering in his eyes, a glimmer of doubt. That was the opportunity Malik needed. "Megan!" he called again. "Grab the briefcase now!" As she moved, determination fueling her actions, Malik took a step closer. "You can end this without violence. We can grab Riker's stories, his truths, and the world will see what real justice looks like together." But the moment stretched, painfully, and Malik felt the weight of uncertainty settle on his shoulders. In that second, Riker's resolve returned. "No, you're not taking this from me." He lunged toward Megan, his movements fueled by a rage that eclipsed logic. But just as he reached for the briefcase, Megan spun out of the way, narrowly dodging his grasp. "Get back!" she yelled, clutching the briefcase tightly. The sharp sound of another shot rang out, but Malik dove towards Riker, aiming to tackle him before he could react. There was no time for hesitation. Desperation fueled every second as they crashed to the ground. "I won't let you destroy anyone else!" Malik yelled, pinning Riker's arms to the floor. Megan stumbled backward, breath hitching as she held the briefcase, the chaos swirling like a thunderstorm around them. Malik could feel the weight of their struggle press against his chest, a palpable fight not just for their lives, but for the very soul of justice itself. In that breathless moment, all of Malik's fears boiled down to one thought. Would they survive this reckoning? Suddenly, Riker's expression twisted with fury. "You think you're righteous, Monroe? You're just a man standing in the way." In a slashing motion, he gripped the case tightly. Malik's heart raced as he felt the world around him tilt. Things must change, Riker shouted, and Malik propelled himself forward, a wild surge of energy. He couldn't let Riker win, not today, not after everything they had fought for. With a burst of determination, Malik grabbed Riker's wrist, twisting it until the briefcase slipped from his grasp. Time seemed to slow as it tumbled, falling open on the floor. "What?" Riker's eyes widened in shock. The contents spilled out. A cascade of documents, photographs, and USB drives skidding across the polished tiles. Malik's mind raced. As he recognized the faces in the pictures, reports of corruption, links to illegal activities that ran deeper than he could have imagined. "Megan, get those!" Malik barked, urgency fueling his voice. As she dove to secure the evidence, Riker's cry echoed through the corridor like a final warning. "You think exposing the truth will save you? You're just delaying the reality!" The flash of a riot squad's blue uniforms flooded the hallway as officers poured into the room, weapons drawn, urgency like a tidal wave behind them. "Get down!" one officer shouted, their presence an overwhelming force. "Hands where we can see them!" Malik's heart pounded in his chest as he looked at Riker, who was now cornered by the deputies. The tide had turned. "You can't control this!" Malik shouted back, a defiance rising as he inhaled deeply. "You think you've won, Monroe?" Riker countered, but the fear was there, hidden behind bravado. "This is just the beginning. With the officers taking control, Riker had nowhere left to go." The panic in his eyes turned to rage as they closed in, and with one last push of energy, he roared, "They won't stop me!" But before he could erupt, Malik stepped forward, the adrenaline propelling him. "No, Riker! Change is happening! The truth is here! You can't burn it away!" The deputies moved swiftly, restraining Riker. The fight extinguished from his eyes as the reality of his defeat sunk in. Malik watched, feeling a mixture of triumph and relief. As Riker was led away, his words echoed hauntingly in the back of Malik's mind. This wasn't just a battle. It was a war for the soul of justice, one that still lay ahead even in the dust settled by today's victory. Turning to Megan, who was gathering the scattered evidence, Malik felt a weight lift from his shoulders. "We did it," he whispered, a sense of disbelief mingling with relief. But just as they began to absorb the gravity of their victory, a loud clap of thunder echoed outside, rattling the windows. Malik turned just in time to see a figure in black slip away into the shadows, the clock counting down ominously in the back of his mind. As the reality of their situation set in, Malik knew this was far from over. This was just the first chapter in a saga far larger than any of them could have envisioned. The evidence collected, the truth shone bright, but the battle lines had been drawn. As chaos settled around them, Malik turned to face the remnants of the courtroom, ready to fight for what lay ahead, prepared for the storm brewing on the horizon. The fight for justice was more than just a singular moment. It was a movement, a resurrection of truth, and nothing could extinguish that flame. And as the doors of the courthouse swung shut behind them, he felt the pulse of determination growing stronger, burning brightly. This journey was only beginning, and together they would see it through to the end. The ungraspable weight of impending change loomed, a promise etched into the fabric of their lives. The fight was just starting. The real battle for justice awaited. And this time, they were. Ready.